Hi, so we're just doing a quick tutorial here on how to solder a Western Union splice. In our project we use this to connect the electronic speed controllers to an AC adapter. So to do a Western Union you're going to need the following tools. First you're going to need safety glasses, safety first. You're going to need a pair of diagonal cutters used for cutting the wire. A pair of strippers, maybe optional, you might be able to just do it with a knife, but they're still nice to have. Helping hands, also optional equipment, but very useful when doing extensive soldering. We've got some heat shrink tubing here, and then we've got our two kinds of wire. Now for this, I'm using one piece of, let's see if that'll focus in on that. Now it won't. Stranded wire and one solid wire. And we've got here some leaded solder. They produce a non-leaded solder, but I prefer leaded solder. I tend to find you get a better action out of it. One soldering iron, which is already heated up. Wet paper towel for cleaning off your iron. And then a heat gun. That's really just used at the end for shrinking the heat shrink. So these are all the supplies you're going to need. And we'll just go ahead and get started right on this. So first you want to take, and I've already pre-stripped these wires. You're going to take the two wires and you're going to pretty much cross them just like that, kind of right in the middle. And then you put a thumb on one side and a finger on the other. And you do your first bend. It should look kind of like a cross like that, where they're just kind of, attached right to each other. And then you're going to keep bending. Now, this may seem kind of simple, but it's actually the signature of the Western Union splice. The reason it's called a Western Union splice, by the way, is that this is what they've been using to splice wires since the good old telegraph days. So you're going to want to pull these around, get them cinched. Now you would want to do this next step before you do your splice, but in this case I've got length of wire. So you're going to take your heat shrink tubing and slip it over the wire. And the heat shrink tubing will make it so that once you have your solid electrical mechanical connection inside the splice, that'll actually keep it insulated. So I'm going to use my helping hands here to hold the two pieces of wire. So I just need to bend that down a little bit more. So we've got that, and you can see they're nice. You can give them a little tug just to kind of tighten them up. And take your soldering iron and when you're first using a soldering iron, you gotta clean it. And you clean it by hitting it with some solder until you get a nice pool on there, and then wiping it across the cloth. And that cleans all that black carbonaceous material off of it. I'm a little obsessive about cleaning my iron. I like it to be nice and clean, which is essential because that way you'll actually get a nice clean melt. So you don't want to be constantly melting and remelting solder because it reduces its electrical conductivity. So I've got a nice clean, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, it's a nice clean shiny tip on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put just a little bit of solder on the tip of the iron, which allows the heat to conduct through it. We're going to tap it to the underside of the wire, and we're going to run solder all through this connection. And you're going to let it be really liquefied and know that it's fully flowed into the wire. You can see it'll pull up around the coils, but usually you get a nice clean sort of look to it. You don't want any spotting or any areas where you're not seeing electrical conductivity being possible. So that's pretty much it for the soldering end. I'm going to go ahead and unplug my iron. Leave that running. And plug in the heat gun. Don't let your heat gun fall over on the table. Alright, so then we'll pull the wire out, pull the heat shrink tubing up and over the soldered connection, put it back in the helping hands. You're going to want to pray that your heat gun doesn't trip the circuit. And you're just going to put it on low and just kind of wave it back and forth. Takes in a second to warm up. Once it starts to warm up, and I like to start at one side and work my way across. Once you start to see the shrink close down, and you don't want to overdo it because you don't want to, melt anything, but you do want to make sure that that shrink's coming all the way down. Start smoking or anything like that, you want to stop. Move on to a different area. When you make sure that the heat shrink's fully closed around it, that way it won't slide off if the wire is getting pulled through something. And there you go. So we've got a strong mechanical connection from the two wires coiling around each other. We've got a strong electrical connection because of the solder having flown all the way through the splice. And then it's well insulated because it's got this heat shrink on it. And that is how you do a Western Union splice. Well, thank you very much for watching and have a wonderful day.